Hello, I am Christina Wood, and I decided to do my report on international trade and the coronavirus. So, a little bit of background is the United States banned trade with China until the early 1970s. Thereafter, trade grew rapidly, and after the full normalization of diplomatic and commercial relationships in 1979, the United States became the second largest importer to China. In 1986, the U.S. was China's third largest partner in overall trade. COVID-19 pandemic. Due to the pandemic of COVID-19 outbreak, the U.S. as a whole is reconsidering some of our international trade with China. Number one being pharmaceuticals, such as antidepressants, HIV and AIDS medications, birth control pills, chemotherapy treatments, medication for Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, epilepsy, and Parkinson's. The number two issue being personal protective equipment, such as gowns, gloves, masks, N95 masks, respirators, and ventilators. Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas and Congressman Mike Gallagher from Wisconsin introduced the Protecting Our Pharmaceutical Supply Chain from China Act, which would end U.S. dependency on China for pharmaceutical manufacturing. Key restrictions would go into effect in 2022 and would have no impact on the current coronavirus pandemic. No FDA resources will be diverted to begin implementation. The bill would track active pharmaceutical ingredients through an FDA registry, would prohibit pharmaceutical purchases from China or products with active pharmaceutical ingredients created in China. It would create transparency in the supply chain by instituting a country of origin labeled of all imported drugs. It would also provide economic incentive for manufacturing drugs and medical equipment right here in the United States. International trade main points. Liberalism. By building international organizations, institutions, and norms, states can mutually benefit from economic exchange. States want wealth to increase in absolute terms, which means not at the expense of others. This also helps keep peace with other countries. If there happened to be a war between US and China, this would destroy economic growth between us both. Liberalism believes in markets, supply and demand, and equilibrium price. The government role for liberalism is non-interference in economics. Politicals, Politics should serve the interest of economic efficiency. Mercantilism. Mercantilism is competitive, so this means that each state must protect its own interests at the expense of others, like for the bill that Tom Cotton and Congressman Mike Gallagher protecting our pharmaceutical supply chain. That bill is competitive. It is protecting us and not worrying so much about China at this point. But the most important goal of economic policy is the creation of the most favorable possible distribution of wealth. Uh, Mercantilism, the purpose of the military is economic security of the state. It emphasizes conflicting interest in economic exchange, and it makes our country richest of all for our best interest and not of theirs, us not depending so much on China for our pharmaceuticals and other PPE gear. Balance of trade must be positive. Balance of trade. USA. Pharmaceuticals. As we already spoke of the pharmaceuticals with China and them having the greater upper hand if they can't fill our orders or if they don't have supplies or if they don't want to give us the mask that they have because they're also going through a pandemic. Excuse me. How much do you make exporting products? How much do you make importing products? US imports a lot of oil from dangerous parts of the world, causing us to be too dependent on other countries. If we were not so dependent, we would spend less money on international safety, which is our military. We also are so integrated that the US created the international community that facilitated trade based on capitalism. We should reduce energy independence, put money into our education, make more middle-class countries for the greater good of all. China. China has a positive balance of trade, which means they have reserves, which is minus debt. China very much depends on export. So China is making tons of money because positive balance of trade advanced economy research and development. They are very dependent on exports trying to get the Chinese to buy Chinese. When they achieve this goal, they will be a stable economic system. Endpoints. Economic integration. Agreement among countries to reduce or remove tariff, which is taxes, to the free flow of goods or services. Trade policy. Standards, goals, rules, and regulation on trading. US and China being unable to fill obligations due to COVID-19 is an example of this. Aid. Giving China 17.8 tons of donated medical supplies in February 2020 to help with their pandemic of COVID-19 from the US. China was unable to send us our full order or any extra to help in our pandemic because they wanted to keep the masks for themselves. International migration. So people leave to come work and send money back home. Some people want a different life. We have a large population of people from China here in Midland, and they are great people and contribute to our community. Unfortunately, there are also some bad people that want to commit crimes and are still very racist to the people that were born and raised here in the US. Regional integration is free trade, custom union, common market, and economic union. That concludes my presentation on international trade and the coronavirus pandemic. Thank you for listening.